What's up guys, Mike here, and today's video is pretty self-explanatory. We are looking at 4 of the top NBA super teams that failed horribly. Really, there's no need for too much of an intro here, so let's jump into the video here with number 4, the 2008/2009 Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns of the mid-2000s were coached by Mike D'Antoni and ran a revolutionary fast-paced offense that at times seemed to be unguardable. With two-time MVP Steve Nash at the helm, paired with Amari Stoudemire as a perfect premier big man, several times the mid to late 2000s Phoenix Suns almost made the NBA Finals, only to come up a little short. In 2005, the Suns would match up with the Spurs in the Western Conference Finals, but only won one game and were sent home packing. In 2006, again, Phoenix made the Western Conference Finals, but again, they lost. Then, after a 2007 season that saw them win 61 games but lose before the Western Conference Finals, Phoenix felt that while they had a great regular season roster, changes needed to be made in order to have playoff success. This meant that at the 2008 trade deadline, the Suns made a massive move when they traded away all-star Shawn Marion for a very old Shaquille O'Neal. This trade would prove to be a disaster for Phoenix, as their offense was based on floor spacing and shooting, while Shaq, well, again, Shaq was at the point in his career where he was a shell of his former self, aka the man had put on some pounds. Because of this, when it came time for the playoffs, the Suns had gone from a contender to a team without an identity, which meant that it was no surprise when they lost to the Spurs in the first round of the playoffs. Despite this setback though, some Phoenix fans did remain optimistic because they believed that maybe the team just needed an entire season with Shaq on the roster to really gel. These fans were horribly wrong, as despite the fact that Shaq averaged almost 18 points and 8.5 rebounds a game while being named an all-star, the 2009 season would see the Suns win just 46 games and miss out on the playoffs for the first time in the Steve Nash era. Then, as if to prove that it really was Shaq that was weighing them down, during the 2009 offseason, the Suns would actually trade Shaq to the Cavs, and then the very next season without Shaq, Phoenix again made the Western Conference Finals before losing in 6 games to the Lakers. Clearly, looking back at the Shaq trade, it's obvious that the Suns made a very big mistake, and it appears that Steve Nash agrees, as after his time with the Suns ended, Nash was quoted as saying, "I think we were a championship caliber team. We might have had a shot or two if we had stuck together." But before we get into that, guys, I do want to say thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's video. Now, if somehow you don't know what SeatGeek is, it's basically an app that takes all of the best ticket prices from around the internet and puts them all in one place for you to get the best deal. Also, SeatGeek makes it easy to see what the best deal is because they score every ticket on a scale from 1 to 100 based on how good that ticket's price is. And on top of that, the app also gives you a preview of the seat that you're about to buy, which personally I think is awesome because you're previewing the seats you're about to get. That means you know you're getting the best seats possible. So if you want those best seats for the best prices possible, download SeatGeek and use the promo code 2KMike for $20 off your first order. The link to download SeatGeek will also be in the description. And now, number 3, the 2013 Los Angeles Lakers. While the 2004 Lakers very well could have been on this list, in my opinion, the 2013 Lakers are much more interesting. Because remember, in the 2012 offseason, the Los Angeles Lakers would make 2 big-time moves. First, they sent a bunch of draft picks to Phoenix in exchange for 38-year-old Steve Nash. Then, 1 month later, it appeared that the Lakers had hit the jackpot when they were able to basically trade an injury-prone Andrew Bynum for the best center in the NBA, Dwight Howard. By the way, I know a lot of people hate on Dwight now, but we need to remember that before he was traded to the Lakers, Dwight had been the NBA's Defensive Player of the Year 3 times and had just been named First Team All-NBA the last 5 seasons. With all of this said, however, by the start of the 2013 season, it was very obvious that this team was seemingly destined to fail. Because after just 5 games, the Lakers had already experienced one of the worst starts in their franchise franchise history as they were quickly just 1-4, and ridiculously, because of this, in a desperation move, the Lakers decided to fire head coach Mike Brown and eventually replace him with Mike D'Antoni. This was bold, to say the least, and unfortunately for Lakers fans, these early failures would prove to be a season-long experience. Honestly, when it comes down to it, Nash and Dwight really just never fit into this roster. I mean, both Kobe and Nash were very ball-dominant players whose games just did not mesh. Meanwhile, Dwight insisted on getting as many post-up opportunities as possible and basically refused to run the pick and roll. On top of this, Kobe would later say in an interview with USA Today, quote, "I tried teaching Dwight, I tried showing him, but the reality is that when you have a perception of what is going to win a championship, and most perceptions of what it's like to win are your friends all the time." And I think that's what his perception was of the idea, but when he saw the reality of it, it made him uncomfortable. Obviously here we can see that Kobe was unhappy with Dwight and basically said that he did not have the mindset required to win a title. This would show throughout the rest of the 2013 season. The Lakers would win just 45 games, and after Kobe tore his Achilles, LA would go on to be swept by the Spurs in the first round of the playoffs. From there, Dwight would leave for the Houston Rockets, Nash would end up retiring due to his injuries, and since Dwight Howard left their team, the Los Angeles Lakers have not made the playoffs since. So I'm assuming you guys have heard of the curse of the Bambino. All I'm saying is that right now, the Lakers are experiencing a Dwightmare. If this ever becomes a thing, remember, I started it. Number 2, the 2005 Indiana Pacers. In the 2004 NBA season, the Indiana Pacers established themselves as the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. Led by a pair of all-stars in a young Ron Artest and Jermaine O'Neal, the Pacers would win 61 games, and Artest was named the NBA's Defensive Player of the Year. And sure, while Indiana would fall to the Detroit Pistons after 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals, it was clear that this Indiana team was a legitimate contender for the 2005 NBA championship. This was especially true when we consider the fact that in the 2004 offseason, sensing that they needed a better third option, the Pacers would trade Al Harrington for Steven Jackson. And it should come as no surprise that to start off the 2005 season, it was the Indiana Pacers who jumped out to a 7-2 record, which was good, but in that 9-game stretch, Ron Artest would miss 2 games. In the 7 games that Ron played in, Indiana was actually 6-1 with their only loss coming in overtime. And remember, as I said before, Artest had just won the Defensive Player of the Year award, and now to begin the year, he also was averaging almost 25 points a game on 50% shooting. He had seriously begun to establish himself as a true NBA star. However, with all of this said, in the 9th game of the 2005 season, a game that saw the Indiana Pacers destroy none other than the team that beat them in the 2004 Eastern Conference Finals, the Detroit Pistons, the Pacers, of course, would run into some major problems. Now, of course, the Malice at the Palace was an event that included Ron Artest and Steven Jackson charging into the stands to fight fans while Jermaine O'Neal was found throwing haymakers at fans on the court. This was one of the worst things to ever happen to the NBA, and if you want to learn more about it, I did make a video about it a few years ago. I'll leave the link to that video in the description. Let's not derail this video though, so regardless of that, it was the Malice at the Palace that destroyed the 2005 Indiana Pacers. Ron Artest would be suspended for the remainder of the season. Steven Jackson was suspended for 30 games, and Jermaine O'Neal was suspended for 15. Obviously, these suspensions had a huge impact on the Pacers season that year, as even though they had lost their star player in Ron Artest, Indiana would still lose in the 2nd round of the playoffs, but was clearly not the championship contender they had once been. This horrible event would also have a long-lasting negative effect on both the Pacers and Ron Artest, as after playing just 16 games in 2006 with Indiana, Ron was traded to the Sacramento Kings and never again showcased the potential he had once demonstrated to begin the 2005 season. Which, of course, leaves us with some major what-ifs, because if the Malice at the Palace never happened, would the 2005 Pacers have ended up as NBA champions? Also, if he had never charged into the stands, what would have happened to Ron Artest? I mean, again, the man had just won Defensive Player of the Year and was now averaging 25 points per game. In that 2005 season, he was just 25 years old. And number one, the 2014 Brooklyn Nets. In the 2013 offseason, new Brooklyn Nets owner, Russian billionaire Mikhail Prokhorov made it clear to the front office that he was tired of losing games. He wanted a championship caliber roster. The idea was to form a super team that combined current Nets players such as All-Stars Darren Williams, Joe Johnson, and pre-Splash Mountain Brook Lopez with the championship experienced Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. However, to get this deal done, Brooklyn would need to make a major risk in regards to their future, and as we all know, the Nets would practically trade their next 50 first-round picks to the Celtics in exchange for two players who were 36 years old or older. The thing is, though, we have to remember that at the time, the NBA community actually thought that the Nets had won this trade. The reason for this is that people assumed that Brooklyn would be title contenders for the next few seasons, so that meant that their picks would not be too valuable. And looking even further into this, the NBA community did have good reason to believe in Brooklyn, because at the time, Darren Williams was seen as a top point guard in the league and was only 28 years old. Meanwhile, Joe Johnson was a 6-time All-Star, and Brook Lopez had just been named an All-Star for the first time. However, with all of this said, obviously things would go very wrong, and really all we have to do here to find out what went wrong is listen to Paul Pierce, because in an interview after he left the Nets, Pierce was quoted as saying, "It was a tough situation last year. Horrible, really. It was just the guys' attitudes there. It wasn't like we were surrounded by a bunch of young guys. They were vets who didn't want to play and didn't want to practice. I was looking around saying, what's this? Kevin and I had to pick them up every day in practice." Yikes. Sure, the Nets would end up reaching the second round of the playoffs that season, but no one really thought they were championship contenders. And to make a bad situation even worse, after the 2014 season, the Nets would decide not to re-sign Paul Pierce and to trade away Kevin Garnett. So there we have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe. If you're already subscribed, thank you for still being here. Thank you for supporting me. You're awesome. I hope you have an awesome day, and cue that music. If you're still here while the music is cued, here are two videos I think you are going to love watching. All you have to do is just click on either one of them on the screen right here. And other than that, guys, again, have a great day and peace.